Somewhere in a pharmaceutical company right now, a statistician is running a SAS program that was written in 2004. It calculates the primary endpoint analysis for a clinical trial. The results of that analysis will go to a regulatory submission. The submission will determine whether a drug gets approved. That statistician did not write the program, they inherited it. They cannot fully explain every line of it, but it has been validated and it produces the right numbers, and nobody is going to touch it unless they absolutely have to. This story is not unique to pharmaceuticals. At insurance companies, the pricing model that determines what you pay for your policy runs on SAS programs written 15 years ago that live on a server in the corner. At investment banks, the value at risk calculation that gets reported to regulators every morning runs through SAS scripts that predate the financial crisis. At government statistical agencies, the population models that inform policy run on SAS code that has not been meaningfully reviewed in a decade. Welcome back to the Language Foundry podcast. I am Luigi Rondanini, and in this episode I want to talk about SAS, not software as a service, not the Special Forces Regiment, SAS. Statistical Analysis System, the programming language that quietly runs a significant portion of the world's quantitative analysis, and that almost nobody talks about when the conversation turns to legacy modernization. Let me start with some history. SAS was created at North Carolina State University in the late 1960s and early 1970s, initially as a tool for analyzing agricultural data from government research projects. By 1976, SAS Institute was incorporated as a private company, and the language had found its audience. Statisticians, biostatisticians, actuaries, economists, people who needed to analyze large data sets with complex statistical methods and who wanted a language designed specifically for that task. For decades, SAS was the undisputed standard. If you were doing clinical trial analysis for an FDA submission, you used SAS. If you were doing actuarial pricing, you used SAS. If you were building a credit risk model at a bank, you used SAS, not because there was no alternative, but because SAS had proven itself in regulated environments. It had a rigorous validation framework that regulators trusted, and it had a huge user base that created a self-reinforcing ecosystem of expertise. The result is that SAS programs, particularly in finance, insurance, and life sciences, represent enormous concentrations of institutional knowledge. A pharmaceutical company's SAS library is not just code. It is the accumulated methodology of every statistical analysis their teams have ever run. The precise implementation of every efficacy endpoint, every safety analysis, every population subset definition that has ever passed regulatory scrutiny. And now the world has changed around it. Python has won the data science world. That is not a controversial statement anymore. The open source ecosystem, Pandas, NumPy, SciPy, scikit-learn, has become the standard toolkit for quantitative analysis. Universities teach Python. New hires expect Python. The cloud infrastructure that organizations want to run their analytical workloads on is Python native. At the same time, SAS Institute's commercial licensing model is facing pressure it has never faced before. Annual SAS licenses for enterprise installations run to significant six-figure sums. Organizations are asking whether they can get the same analytical capability from open-source tooling at a fraction of the cost. And so the question that more and more organizations are asking is, how do we migrate our SAS programs to Python? They then discover that the question is much harder than it sounds. SAS is not a simple language. It has features that have no direct equivalent in Python, and understanding those features is essential to understanding why automated translation is difficult. The first thing to understand is the data step. SAS processes data row by row in a paradigm called the data step. You write a program that describes what happens to each observation in a dataset, and SAS implicitly loops through every row, applying your logic. This is conceptually very different from the vectorized, data frame-oriented way that Python programmers think about data. Translating a data step into idiomatic Python means mapping that implicit loop onto pandas operations, and doing so in a way that preserves the exact semantics, including the output buffer, the automatic variable behavior, the first dot and last dot group detection. The second thing is the macro preprocessor. SAS has a macro language that generates SAS code before execution. A single macro call can expand into hundreds of lines of data steps and PROC steps. The macro preprocessor has its own variables, its own conditional logic, its own loops. Before you can even parse a SAS program, you need to process its macros, resolve all the variable substitutions, execute all the conditional blocks, and produce the expanded source that will actually run. This is the part that trips up almost every automated approach. If you try to parse SAS code without first running the macro preprocessor, you are not parsing SAS. You are parsing something that looks like SAS, but is not quite. The resulting parse errors are confusing, and the resulting translation is incomplete. The third thing is what I call the invisible arithmetic. SAS has its own date system, its own numeric formatting conventions, its own rounding rules. SAS dates are stored as integers, representing days since the 1st of January 1960. SAS has functions like intnx and intck for date arithmetic that do not have a one-line Python equivalent. When a risk model says add 3 months to this date and roll to end of month, the precise interpretation of that instruction is encoded in SAS function semantics that need to be reproduced faithfully. In a financial or clinical context, getting this wrong is not a minor inconvenience. It is a material error. So, what does Language Foundry actually do with SAS? We built a deterministic transpiler. It works in 3 stages. The first stage is the macro preprocessor. Before any parsing begins, we process all the %let declarations, resolve all the macro definitions, expand all the macro calls, and handle all the %if, %then, %else conditional blocks. The result is pure SAS code with no macros ready to be parsed. This stage alone, doing it correctly, took longer than everything else combined. The second stage is the parser. We parse the expanded SAS into an abstract syntax tree. Data steps, PROC steps, SQL blocks. Every statement, every function call, every conditional, every array definition. The third stage is the emitter. We walk that tree and generate Python. Data steps become Python functions that iterate over a pandas data frame. PROC sort becomes a pandas sort. PROC means becomes a grouped aggregation. PROC SQL becomes a pandas merge and filter operation. And every SAS-specific function, every data arithmetic call, every input and put conversion maps to a function in our runtime library that replicates the SAS behavior precisely. On our current test corpus, we are passing 96.9% of programs. We run these tests automatically every night. Every program either passes or it surfaces a construct that we have not handled yet, which goes into a quarantine log, exactly as it does for RPG and COBOL. I want to be honest about the 3 categories of programs that do not pass automatically. The first category is programs with external dataset dependencies. A SAS program that begins by reading a file called /data/clients/master_2024.sas7bdat, and that file is a proprietary binary SAS dataset that we do not have access to, cannot be run end-to-end in our testing environment. We can translate the code. We cannot verify the output without the data. This is not a translation failure. It is a testing environment constraint, and it is something every client will need to work through during an engagement. The second category is PROC steps we have not yet fully implemented. SAS has dozens of PROC procedures, from PROC report and PROC tabulate for presentation output, to PROC IML for matrix algebra, to PROC mixed for mixed effects models. The common ones, PROC sort, PROC means, PROC frec, PROC SQL, PROC print, are fully handled. The specialist statistical procedures have equivalents in Python's SciPy and StatsModels libraries, but mapping them with precision requires careful work that we are doing incrementally. If your library is heavy on PROC IML, there will be more human involvement required. We will tell you that up front. The third category is very large macro libraries with complex interdependencies. A macro that calls another macro that calls another macro with shared global macro variables is something our preprocessor handles correctly, but the resulting generated code needs review to confirm that the expansion behaved as intended. This is the SAS equivalent of deeply nested gotos in RPG. The code works, but it requires human judgment to validate. Let me step back and ask the question that I think is actually at the heart of this. Why does it matter that you understand your SAS programs? In clinical trials, every statistical analysis that goes into a regulatory submission needs to be reproducible. The program that generated the result needs to be documented, validated, and archived. When regulators ask questions years later, the organization needs to be able to rerun the analysis and explain every step. If the program has been lost, or the SAS version has changed, or the people who understood it have moved on, that creates a regulatory compliance problem that is genuinely serious. In financial risk, the internal model approval process requires that banks can explain, to the satisfaction of their regulator, exactly how each risk calculation works. A black box SAS program that nobody can fully explain is a model governance problem. DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which we discussed in the previous episode, applies equally to the SAS programs running inside financial institutions as it does to the COBOL. In insurance, the pricing models that determine what customers pay are increasingly subject to algorithmic accountability requirements. Regulators want to understand whether pricing models treat customers fairly. A model encoded in SAS that nobody can explain is not just a technical debt problem. It is a regulatory exposure. And beneath all of that is the same retirement cliff we talked about with COBOL and RPG. The SAS experts who build these models are leaving. The people who will maintain the models next are Python native. The gap between what exists and what the next generation can work with is widening every year. The same principle applies here as it does everywhere else in legacy modernization. The goal is not to destroy what works. It is to make it understandable, to produce a Python equivalent that a modern data scientist can read, test, extend, and explain to a regulator, to build a test suite that proves the Python produces the same results as the SAS, to document what the code does before the last person who knows walks out the door. Migration is optional, understanding is not. If you are sitting on a library of SAS programs, in finance, insurance, clinical research, or government analytics, and you are wondering what to do, I would suggest starting with the same 3 questions we always ask. How many people in your organization genuinely understand each of your critical SAS programs? If the answer is 2, and they are both in their late 50s, you have a knowledge preservation problem. What is the regulatory and audit exposure if one of those programs produces an incorrect result, or if you cannot explain it to a regulator? The answer to that question usually focuses attention very quickly. And have you ever actually tried to run your full SAS library in a test environment, isolated from live data, to see which programs pass and which ones fail? Most organizations have not. The answer is often surprising. The details of our SAS-to-Python transpiler are at languagefoundry.io. There is a live demo if you want to see it in action. If you have a specific SAS program you want to test, get in touch. We will run it through the pipeline and tell you honestly what comes out. Thanks for listening. Episode 4 is coming soon.